They told you this was love. They wrapped it in a championship belt, sprayed it with perfume, and sold it to you like a fairy tale. But what Claressa Shields just broadcast to the entire internet, live, unfiltered, and impossible to take back, might be the most humiliating stretch of footage a man has ever survived while the whole world watched. And here is the part that should terrify every single person in her corner. Nobody leaked this. Nobody hacked this. Nobody set a trap. Claressa Shields picked up her own phone, pressed that live button herself, and marched the camera straight into the blast radius. She detonated her own relationship in real time, and she was still smiling while the shrapnel fell. By the end of this breakdown, you're going to understand exactly why Papoose looked into that lens like a man blinking a distress signal, why a plate of food turned into a crime scene, and why every body language reader on the internet is sounding the same alarm tonight. Stay locked in, because the detail everybody scrolled past is the one that changes everything. Alright y'all, listen up, because we have to walk through this frame by frame. So here's what happened. Claressa Shields was already live, already streaming, already performing for an audience before she ever touched that bedroom door. And she walks up on Papoose with the camera running, under the impression that this man might be asleep, or maybe just now waking up. She comes through that door with the sweet voice. Babe, you up? You awake? And on the surface, that sounds loving. That sounds like a woman checking on her man. But hold on. Freeze the frame right there. Because if you believe there is even a chance that the man is sleeping, and you still walk in broadcasting to thousands of strangers, what you are really saying is that his rest, his privacy, and his dignity all rank below your content. That is not affection. That is acquisition. That is a woman collecting footage of her prize. And get this. In an era where going live can hand the wrong person your exact location, your exact room, your exact moment of vulnerability, she cracked that door open anyway. People have been robbed for less. People have been found for less. But the feed must be fed, and Papoose was the meal on the menu that day. Now here is where the whole thing cracks open. The first real words out of his mouth are not good morning. Not hey baby. The first thing Papoose says is, I am not talking to you on live. Look at that sentence. Study it. That is not a greeting. That is a boundary being erected by a man who has clearly had this exact fight before. You do not develop a reflex like that overnight. That is a scar. That is a man who has learned, through repetition, that every private word he says to Claressa Shields is one upload away from becoming public property. And notice what his sentence tells us about the temperature in that house before the camera ever entered the room. They were already at odds, already tense, already midstorm. He did not say good morning because there was nothing good about it. And the response from Claressa Shields confirms every bit of it. She says, I am on live. Do not start cussing me out. Stop. Read that again. Do not start cussing me out. You only say that to a person when you already know what is sitting on their chest. You only preload a defense like that when you walked into the room fully aware that the man was heated, and you brought the audience in as a shield. Think about the strategy of that. She did not turn the camera off when she realized he was upset. She announced the camera, because now he cannot say what he really feels. Now the audience is her armor. She did not walk into that room to check on Papoose. She walked into that room with hostages. Thousands of little witnesses, all lined up between her and his honest opinion. Let that marinate for a second, because this is the part the blogs keep glossing over. She knew he was bothered. She knew there was a conversation waiting behind that door that he did not want the world to hear. And she chose, consciously, to make that conversation impossible. That is not chaos. That is control. And if you have ever been with somebody who performs the relationship for an audience while starving it behind closed doors, you felt that in your stomach just now. Drop a 1 in the comments if you have lived that dynamic, because I promise you are not alone tonight. Now we get to the tray. Oh, we have to talk about the tray. Because Claressa Shields brings this man a plate of food, and on paper that sounds like a tender gesture, right? A woman bringing her man a plate in bed. Except the internet does not forget, and the timeline does not lie. Before Claressa ever climbed those stairs, she was downstairs on that same live stream, eating. And what she could not finish, she scraped off onto another plate and carried upstairs to Papoose like an offering. And watch what he does. He declines it. Flat. No performance, no gratitude theater. She asks, so you want me to put it in the microwave or put it in the refrigerator? And the man says, I am all right. 3 words. I am all right. That is not a man turning down lunch. That is a man declining the entire production. He is not rejecting eggs. He is rejecting the scene she is trying to film. And she feels it. You can hear the temperature drop in her voice. Because the rejection is not really about the food, and both of them know it. The rejection is about everything the food was supposed to paper over. Then Claressa lets it slip. I could have sat down and ate some more then. There it is. That sentence is a confession wearing an apron. She is telling on herself, Liv, that the plate was an afterthought. Her hunger came first. His plate was built from what survived it, and she expected applause for the delivery. And when the applause did not come, the sweetness curdled on the spot. But wait, because here comes the line of the entire video, the line that every commentator worth their salt has circled in red ink. She looks at that camera, with Papoose sitting right there in the room, and she says to the audience, I do not pay him no mind. I do not pay him no mind. Y'all, that is not a throwaway. That is a declaration of war broadcast to thousands. When a woman gets on a live stream and announces to the world that she does not pay her man no mind, while he is close enough to hear every syllable, she is not venting. She is demoting him. She is telling the audience and telling him at the exact same time, your feelings are not a line item in my budget anymore. I am standing on whatever I am standing on. I do not care how you pout. I do not care if you eat. I do not care if you stay upstairs and stew. And she said it with the camera as her witness, because a private dismissal can be denied later. A public one becomes the record. Now, why would he be pouting in the first place? Why would a grown man go stone silent over a plate of eggs? Because this was never about eggs, and deep down you already know that. Follow the money, because in this situation the money is always the marrow of the bone. The reporting and the rumors around this fight all point the same direction. There was a fight weekend. There was a gate. There were promises made about what Papoose would receive when the dust settled. And word is, the number that showed up was not the number that was promised. Tickets given away, projections that shrank, a pie that came out of the oven half the size he was told to expect. And just like that, the silent treatment upstairs makes perfect sense. That was not a man sulking over breakfast. That was a business partner staring at a shorted invoice, sitting in a bedroom he does not live in, doing math he cannot say out loud because the camera is rolling. And this is where we have to get honest about the architecture of this whole arrangement, because Claressa Shields built this thing on a foundation that was never going to hold weight. Go back to the origin story. This did not start with two people meeting and falling. This started in the direct messages, with an offer, with enticement, with resources dangled in front of a man whose financial life was already being picked apart in public. She did not get chosen. She made a bid. There is a difference, and the difference matters tonight, because a relationship that begins as a transaction can only ever be renegotiated, never deepened. Every month it stays alive, the price gets relitigated. And every time the price gets relitigated, somebody ends up upstairs refusing a plate, while somebody else tells the internet she does not pay him no mind. And let me say this plain, because the internet keeps dancing around it. Papoose is a man whose public relevance, at this stage, runs almost entirely through the women attached to his name. That is not an insult. That is the scoreboard. He was introduced to this generation as Remy Ma's husband, the man who held her down, the loyalty story of the decade. That was his currency, and he spent it. He took the one asset that made him valuable to the culture, the image of the stand-up man, and he cashed it in on this. So when people ask why Papoose stays through the humiliation, through the scraped plates, through being dismissed on a live stream in front of thousands, the answer is ugly and simple. What exactly is he walking back to? The deal is the deal. He knows what he signed. She knows what she bought. The only people still pretending it is a romance are the ones watching the live stream like it is a soap opera, and honestly, can you blame them? Because that is exactly what it has become. Hold on. Let me put this next piece on the table, because it reframes everything you just heard. This story does not actually begin in those DMs. It begins years earlier, in front of a television. It has been documented that Claressa Shields grew up watching Love and hip-hop. She was a teenager when Remy Ma and Papoose were the crown jewels of that franchise, the loyalty couple, the blueprint. And people who study obsession will tell you that fixation does not always look like hatred. Sometimes fixation looks like a woman building her entire adult love life inside somebody else's old set. Look at the pattern. She did not just want a man. She wanted that man. She did not just want a love story. She wanted to insert herself into the sequel of the exact story she binged as a girl, except this time with her name in the credits. Every live stream, every babe you up moment, every public curation of this relationship is another scene she is filming for a show that only exists in her head. She is not dating Papoose. She is directing him. And that is why the camera never turns off. That is why a private argument gets an audience, why a bedroom door gets opened midstream, why a rejected plate becomes content instead of a conversation. Because in her mind, none of this is real unless it is witnessed. The relationship is the footage. The footage is the proof. The proof is the point. She is not showing you her man because she is proud. She is showing you her man because the showing is the entire substance of having him. Take the camera away and ask what is left, and the silence upstairs answers that question for you. Meanwhile, there is a whole ecosystem, an entire community of viewers and commentators that wakes up every single morning to this saga like it is a daily serial. Remy Ma over here, Papoose right there, Claressa Shields in the middle, guest characters rotating in and out like cameos. And here's what blows my mind. She knows the microscope exists. She knows every move gets clipped, dissected, slowed down, and scored. And she keeps feeding it. She keeps handing the machine fresh episodes even while the machine eats her alive. At some point you have to ask, is the validation worth the autopsy? Is being seen really worth being studied? Because from where I am sitting, the attention she is addicted to is the exact attention documenting the collapse in high definition. Now let us talk about what his face was doing, because the body keeps score even when the mouth stays shut. Watch Papoose in that clip. Really watch Papoose. Not what he says, what he does not say, the stillness, the refusal to engage, the eyes that do not light up when she enters. People keep calling that man cold. I call it something else. I call it a hostage keeping his hands where the camera can see them. Because understand what he knows in that moment. He knows that anything he says with real feeling becomes the headline. He knows that if he raises his voice, the clip is titled Papoose explodes on Claressa. If he gets up and leaves, the clip is Papoose storms out. If he sits there silent, the clip is Papoose gives her the cold shoulder. There is no move on the board that does not feed the machine. So he chose the only move that costs him the least. He sat still and said almost nothing. That is not apathy. That is a man running damage control on his own life, in his own bedroom, because his bedroom stopped being his the moment she pressed go. And notice the power dynamic hiding inside that stillness, because this is the part nobody wants to say out loud. A man with his own money, his own car, his own roof, does not have to sit still for a camera he hates. He gets up. He leaves. He drives off, and the stream ends, and the conversation happens later, in private, like grown folks. But when your housing, your meals, your movement, and your pocket all run through the same person holding the phone, you do not get up. You sit there. You decline the plate politely. You say I am all right. And you swallow whatever you actually wanted to say, because the rent on your silence is due every single month. People keep asking why he does not just walk. Walking is a luxury. Walking requires somewhere to walk to. And this is exactly why that detail from earlier in the saga matters so much, the one about the key. Because it has been out there for a long time now that this man has had a key to her place for something like 2 years, and he still has never moved in. 2 years of access, 0 years of commitment. At the time, people framed it as him being distant, him being half in, him playing games. But look at this footage and tell me that Key's story does not read completely different now. He would not move in because he knew. He knew what living inside that house full-time would mean. It would mean the camera at breakfast, the camera at the door, the camera in the bedroom before he is even awake. He kept his own door because he needed one room on this planet where Claressa Shields could not broadcast him. That is not a man avoiding commitment. That is a man preserving his last square foot of privacy like it is oxygen. And after what we all just watched, can anybody honestly say he was wrong? Now, if you think the plate moment was the peak of the awkwardness, you are not ready for the part the clip cut off. Because here is what the short version floating around does not show you. The full context is that she believed he might be asleep. Believed it, operated under it, and still walked in mid-broadcast. So what you are really watching is not a woman surprising her man with breakfast. You are watching a woman so committed to the performance that the possibility of catching him unconscious, undressed, vulnerable, did not even register as a reason to pause the stream. Think about how deep the content reflex has to run for that math to clear. The thought process is not, is he decent? Is he rested? Does he want this? The thought process is the audience is waiting. And when the audience is waiting, outranks, is he even awake? The relationship is not a relationship anymore. It is a production schedule with a bed in it. And I need y'all to sit with one more layer of this, because it is the layer that turns this from messy into genuinely unsettling. Location. When you go live from inside a home, you are not just sharing a moment. You are sharing a map. The view out the window, the sound of the street, the light in the room, the time of day. People with bad intentions do not need much, and the internet is full of folks who treat a live stream like a treasure hunt. Every time she broadcasts from inside that house, she is telling the world exactly where both of them are, exactly when they are there, and exactly how the inside of their private space is laid out. She is not just exposing him emotionally. She is exposing both of them physically, and she does it without blinking, because in her hierarchy of needs, the stream ranks above safety. That is not a quirk. That is a condition. But let us get back to the money, because the money is the engine under every single one of these moments. And the money trail in this story is louder than anything either of them said on that stream. Run the logic with me. He is upset before she enters the room. He refuses to talk on camera. He refuses the food. He sits in silence while she performs for the audience. That is not random moodiness. That is a man who had a number in his head and watched a smaller number show up. And think about what that number was for. Because the whispers around this situation have always said the same thing, that there were obligations stacked on top of obligations. Money promised out of one gate that was already spoken for by the last 3 debts. Money that was supposed to travel through him to other places, other people, other arrangements. So when the gate came in light, when the tickets given away ate the profit, when the math did not math, he was not just disappointed. He was short in every direction. And a man who is short in every direction cannot even afford the conversation about it, because the conversation might cost him the next deposit. So he sits upstairs, declines the plate, and lets her tell the internet she does not pay him no mind. The silence was not surrender. The silence was all he could afford. And here is the brutal symmetry of it. She is tired of paying. He is tired of being paid. Those two exhaustions cannot coexist in the same house forever, because the entire structure is the payments. When a woman starts an arrangement saying, I will provide and you will be seen with me, and then gets tired of providing, what exactly is left on the table? Not history, not loyalty, not a home they built. The payments were the foundation, the walls, and the roof. You cannot get tired of the foundation and keep the house. And you can hear the fatigue in her voice on that stream. I do not pay him no mind is not the sentence of a woman planning a future. That is the sentence of a woman auditing her own investment and finding the returns embarrassing. She is not mad at him. She is mad at the deal. She just cannot say that on camera, because admitting the deal exists collapses the fairy tale she spent 2 years streaming. Now let us widen the lens, because none of this exists in a vacuum, and you cannot understand why this footage hits so hard without understanding the shadow standing just off camera. Remy Ma. Remy Ma is not in that bedroom. Remy Ma is not on that live stream. And yet Remy Ma is in every single frame, because this entire relationship has always been a 3-person story with one seat empty. Think about what the audience is actually watching for. They are not watching Claressa Shields and Papoose build something. They are watching to see whether the woman who took Remy Ma's storyline gets to keep it. Every clip, every stream, every public moment between these two gets measured against the original, against the woman who held him down through a prison bid, against a loyalty story so strong it became culture. And that is the unwinnable game Claressa Shields bought into. She did not just get a man. She got a comparison she can never beat, because the original story had something hers never will. It had no receipt. Nobody can point to the moment Remy Ma purchased anything. And in a culture that can smell a transaction from 3 states away, that difference is everything. And can we be honest about what that does to a person psychologically? To wake up every day knowing the public is not rooting for you. They are monitoring you. To know that every stream you start is instantly framed as the latest chapter of a story where you are cast as the interloper. Most people would shrink from that. Claressa Shields does the opposite. She streams more. She broadcasts harder. She opens the bedroom door wider. And that right there is the tell of the entire psychology. When someone knows the public doubts the relationship, the healthy move is privacy. Prove it by living it, quietly, until the noise dies of boredom. The Claressa Shields move is the reverse. Prove it by showing it, constantly, until the showing becomes the relationship itself. She is not fighting the perception. She is feeding it, because in her economy, being doubted loudly still beats being ignored quietly. And that is the loneliest math in the world. A woman with belts, with medals, with accomplishments most athletes only dream about, still measuring her worth by whether the internet believes a man wants to be in her bed. Let me ask y'all something, and I want real answers in the comments, not the usual noise. If your partner walked into your room mid-live stream, believing you might be asleep, camera rolling, thousands watching, is that love or is that a violation? Because the internet is split clean in half on this, and both halves are sure they are right. One side says she was just sharing her life, that couples stream together all the time, that he knew what he signed up for. The other side says consent is not a subscription, that being in a relationship does not mean your private moments belong to the content calendar, and that the face he made told you everything about how signed up he actually feels. I know where I land. You heard it. But this is one of those situations where your answer says more about your own relationships than it does about theirs, and I think that is exactly why this clip will not stop spreading. Because here is the thing about this footage that elevates it above regular celebrity mess. It is a mirror. Strip away the fame, the belts, the name recognition, and what is left is a scene millions of people recognize from their own lives. One person performing the relationship. One person enduring it. One person talking to an audience about their partner while their partner sits in earshot. One person offering gestures instead of effort, food instead of respect, content instead of intimacy. That is why the comment sections under this clip read like group therapy. People are not reacting to Claressa Shields and Papoose. They are reacting to every time they were the one sitting silent upstairs, or every time they caught themselves performing happiness for people who did not have to live in it. The clip went viral because it is specific, but it is going to stay viral because it is universal. Everybody has either been the person holding the phone or the person pretending to sleep through the door opening. And for the ones asking why the commentary community cannot let this story go, why every stream gets clipped and every clip gets a reaction video, I will tell you exactly why. Because this story refuses to resolve. Most celebrity drama has an arc: fight, apology, reconciliation, or breakup. Done. This one just continues. It renews itself every week like a series that keeps getting picked up, and the cast keeps handing out new episodes for free. She streams, he sulks, the internet decodes, somebody responds, she streams again. It is a perpetual motion machine of mess, and every single person in it knows the machine is running and keeps oiling the gears. Remy Ma says something, the machine spins. Claressa goes live, the machine spins. Papoose breathes too loud in the background, the machine spins. At this point, the drama is not happening to them. They are manufacturing it, all of them, because the attention has become its own economy, and everybody in this story is on payroll. But machines like that always break the same way. Not with an explosion. With a leak. A stream that goes one sentence too far. A moment where the performance slips and the real dynamic shows through. And that is what makes this bedroom clip different from the 100 clips before it. This one was not messy because of what was said. It was messy because of what was visible. The hierarchy was visible. The fatigue was visible. The transaction was visible. She broadcast the inside of the arrangement thinking she was showing love, and instead she showed the ledger. And once the audience sees the ledger, they cannot unsee it. Every future stream now gets read through this one. Every babe, every plate, every sweet gesture gets reverse-engineered by thousands of detectives asking the same question. What did that cost, and who paid? Now, some of y'all are going to say I am being too hard on her. That she is a champion. That she has earned the right to live her life out loud, that plenty of couples share everything and thrive. And you know what? That is a fair position, so let me meet it head on. The problem was never that she shares. The problem is the asymmetry. Sharing works when both people are holding the camera. When one person holds the camera and the other person is just in frame, that is not sharing, that is exhibiting. And the evidence of the asymmetry is all over this clip. She narrates. He abstains. She broadcasts. He declines. She tells the audience she does not pay him no mind. He tells nobody nothing, because he was never given a channel to speak on. Find me one moment in that entire stream where Papoose chose to be on camera, where his voice entered because he wanted it there. You cannot, because it does not exist. Every second of his presence in her content is presence she collected, not presence he offered. That is the whole story in one sentence. She is the only one in that relationship who ever presses record. And let us talk about him for a second with clear eyes, because accountability does not flow in one direction on this channel. Let us be clear. Papoose is not a hostage in the legal sense. He is a grown man who made a series of choices with full knowledge of the price tag. Papoose walked away from one of the most respected love stories in the culture. Papoose stepped into an arrangement where the terms were never hidden. The money was the offer from day one, and he accepted it, and Papoose keeps accepting it. So when people ask me if I feel sorry for him, the honest answer is complicated. I feel sorry for the version of him that existed before all this, the man whose name used to mean something specific and honorable. But this version, the one sitting silent upstairs while his silence gets monetized, this version re-signed the lease every single month. Sympathy has a shelf life, and has expired somewhere around the 10th stream he sat through without ever once standing up and saying turn it off, or I am gone. The door was never locked. The door just cost money to walk through, and he has not been willing to pay it. Which brings us to the question everybody actually came here for. Where does this end? Because it does end. Arrangements like this always end, and they end on one of 3 tracks. Track 1, the money stops. She gets tired of the line item, or the fortunes shift, and the foundation crumbles because the foundation was the funding. Track 2, the shame wins. He hits a morning where being the internet's cautionary tale costs more than the deposits are worth, and he walks, broke but breathing. Or track 3, the darkest one, the arrangement just calcifies. They stay, not because it works, but because leaving costs more than enduring, and the streams get quieter and the silences get longer, and one day the audience realizes they have not seen his face in months. If I had to put money on it, and mind you this is analysis not prophecy, track 1 and track 2 are running neck and neck, and the finish line is closer than either of them wants to admit. Because the energy in that bedroom was not the energy of a rough patch. It was the energy of an expiration date somebody already circled in pencil. And to Claressa Shields, if any word of this ever travels back to you, hear this part in the spirit it is offered. You are a 2-time Olympic champion. You are one of the most decorated fighters of your generation, man or woman. You build a legacy in the ring that no blogger, no commentator, no stream clip can ever take from you. And the tragedy of this entire saga is that the legacy is sitting in the corner gathering dust while the relationship gets top billing. The world should be arguing about your place in boxing history. Instead, the world is arguing about a plate of scraped eggs and a man who would not speak to you on camera. You are worth more than the content. You are always worth more than the content. The fastest way to make the internet stop studying your relationship is to stop assigning the homework. Turn the camera off at the bedroom door. Not because the internet deserves your privacy, but because you do. And since we are being thorough tonight, let us address the question that keeps popping up in every thread about this clip. Why her? Why did he say yes to this in the first place? And I am going to give it to you straight, with no garnish. He was not her first call. He was not her second call. If we are being brutally honest, he was not on the call sheet at all. She went to him. She entered his messages. She made the approach, because the approach was the only way this pairing was ever going to exist. There is no version of events where a man drowning in public scrutiny about his finances wakes up and pursues a situation like this on his own. The leverage ran in one direction from day one, and both of them knew it. That is why every power moment in that bedroom clip flows the way it does. She holds the camera because she holds the leverage. He holds his tongue because he holds nothing else. And before anybody calls that cruel, understand it is not an insult, it is a diagnosis. Relationships built on leverage do not fail because the people are evil. They fail because leverage expires. Beauty fades, money moves, relevance shifts, and the day the leverage dies is the day both people look across the table and realize there was never anything else in the room. Now, let me give you the part that genuinely stopped me cold when I first watched this footage, because it is small, and it is quiet, and it is devastating. When Claressa Shields offers the plate and Papoose declines, there is a beat, just a beat, where Claressa asks him whether he wants it microwaved or refrigerated. On the surface, that is a logistical question. But listen to what is underneath it. She is not asking what he needs. She is asking where to store the evidence of her effort. That plate was never nourishment. That plate was a prop in a scene titled "Look How Good I Treat Him." And when the prop got rejected, her first instinct was not concern, it was inventory. Microwave or refrigerator. Keep the prop fresh or put it away. Because the scene already failed, and now the only question left is whether the prop can be reused in the reshoot. I have watched this clip more times than I can count, and that tiny moment is the one that tells you the entire relationship is staged, not maliciously, not consciously maybe, but staged all the same. She is curating a museum of herself as a loving partner, and he keeps refusing to be an exhibit. And y'all, we have to acknowledge the irony sitting right in the middle of all this, because it is almost too perfect. She is one of the most dangerous human beings on the planet inside a boxing ring. Undefeated power, championship pedigree, a woman who has made grown men rethink their career choices. And yet the one fight she keeps losing is the one where the opponent is a camera and the stakes are a man's genuine affection. She can game plan for any fighter alive, but she cannot game plan her way into being chosen freely, because that is the one thing money and belts and streams cannot manufacture. Every time she presses record hoping to capture proof that he really wants to be there, she captures the opposite. The camera has become her toughest opponent, and it is undefeated, because the camera only records what is actually true. So here is where I want to hear from the Day One subscribers, the ones who have watched this saga from the first headline. Tell me in the comments, what is the single moment in this whole timeline that made you stop and say something is not right here? Was it the key detail? Was it a stream from months back? Was it this bedroom clip? Because everybody following this story has won. That one frame where the fairy tale cracked for them. And I genuinely want to map where the audience's doubt started, because I have a theory that most of y'all clocked this long before today, and this clip did not create the doubt. It just confirmed it. Now, before we close this out, I need y'all to do 3 things, and I do not say this every video, so you know I mean it tonight. First, get in those comments and answer the question I asked earlier, because I will be down there reading. Livestream walks in on you half asleep, camera rolling, love, or violation. One-word answers count. Second, if this breakdown connected dots you had not connected before, share it with somebody who has been following this saga, because the detail about the key, the one about 2 years of access and 0 move-in, changes how the whole clip reads, and people deserve that context. And third, subscribe and hit the bell, because this story is not done. There are receipts sitting in the timeline that have not surfaced yet, context around that fight weekend, and the money behind it that is still trickling out. And when it surfaces, this is where you are going to want to hear it first. Because remember how we started this. They told you this was love. They wrapped it in a championship belt and sold it as a fairy tale. But fairy tales do not need a live stream to survive, and love does not flinch at its own bedroom door. What we watched was not a couple having a bad morning. What we watched was a business arrangement caught on camera during business hours, and the only thing either of them seemed sure of was that the audience could never, ever know. Well, now you know. And something tells me the next chapter is already loading, because in this story, the camera never stays off for long. I will see y'all in the comments, and when the next episode drops, you already know where to find me. And one last thing before I let y'all go. Somebody in the premiere chat asked me why I keep covering this story when the two of them seem determined to tell on themselves every single week anyway. Because stories like this are not really about them. They are about every person watching who has ever confused being provided for with being loved, or confused being shown off with being chosen. This clip is a free lesson wrapped in celebrity packaging, and the lesson is this. Anything that has to be broadcast to feel real is already gone.